Hi and welcome to this latest 10x Leadership video. This week I'm going to be talking about something that we're going to be talking about in a few videos really, which is about making progress. So the importance of making progress as a team that contributes to your company or organisation's success. But there are a whole series of ways to do that. So what I thought I'd do is a short video on one of those ways. And the first one I want to talk about is, how do you make progress? Really by preventing circular discussions. So I'll tell you all about it after the break. See you shortly. So as I say, this video this week is about helping your team make progress. And I suppose what I want to do to start with is just talk about why that's important. Your job as a leader is to help individuals and to help your team make progress. And you might be thinking, well, why do I want to do that? Well, that's because, of course, making progress as a team, becoming more competent, will do a whole load of different things, including making your team, individuals and your team, more productive, more effective. That will have a knock-on impact and make your team more motivated. It will help with their development. It will help with their morale. Improved morale will help with retention. That would help with attraction when you're trying to get people into the organisation, and a whole host of other things. So, there's really sound business reasons why you should be trying to help your team make progress. I suppose the other thing to bear in mind is that sometimes I see teams who think they've sorted it and made it, and it's they've cracked it. They don't need to do anything else. But of course, the world keeps turning, the world keeps moving on, and if you're not progressing, if you're not going forwards, you're actually going backwards. So one of the ways to prevent you from going backwards and to ensure that you are progressing is to make sure, or at least to minimise circular discussions. So revisiting things that you've talked about before. And it's quite easy to get into that cycle where you've talked about something, you think it's sorted, and then you go back to it and talk about it again and again and again. The process that I'm going to talk about today is just one of the ways to help you break that cycle and to keep making progress rather than getting stuck and having to go back over the same old ground time after time. So like lots of, I'm going to say models, but lots of approaches, it's all quite simple. So there are just 4 steps to this process, and I'm going to go through each of them in turn. So the first one is to discuss it. So whatever the thing is, it's usually an issue or a problem, or you're trying to sort out a process or a way of working, or you've got a challenge and you're trying to work out how to solve it. So the first thing to do is to discuss it. And in order to do that, you need to get the relevant stakeholders together. And I talked in one of the previous videos about how to identify who your stakeholders are and make sure that you understand how to engage those stakeholders, when to engage them, how frequently you need to engage them. So if you haven't already seen that video, I recommend you go and have a look at that one. But the point of this is to get all your relevant stakeholders together so that you can make a decision, really, so that you don't have to revisit because you had the right people in the room when you were discussing it. And of course, when you've got the stakeholders together, the key then is to define the problem, make sure that you're trying to solve the right problem. And again, I've done videos in the past about how to get to the root cause of an issue, and also how do you make sure that you are focusing on the right problem. So again, if you haven't seen those already, go back and have a look at those. Hopefully they will help you as well. And I suppose the third thing to do in this space is to define the options to solve it. So, working collectively as a team, determine what can solve this issue. How can you fix it? And again, my advice here would be, don't constrain yourselves. There are going to be lots of things that will constrain you, and sometimes we think there are barriers that don't exist. So look at the problem, think about the solutions, capture those solutions, regardless of whether you think they're a bit bonkers or not. Because it might be that, one of those ideas is absolutely brilliant, it's not been thought of before, it hasn't been tried before, and it's perfect for solving the issue or the problem. So step number 1, discuss it with the right people in the room. Step number 2, as I've already sort of hinted at, is make an informed decision. And it's an informed decision because you've got the right stakeholders together, you know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and you've worked through it and you've come up with some options. So of course the first step in terms of making an informed decision is considering those options that that you've come up with, or in fact it might be some that other people have come up with. It might be that you come up with the options and pass it to your boss to make a decision. It depends how you work in your company or organisation. So consider the options is the first one. The second bit, which sounds obvious but quite often gets overlooked, is check that the option or options actually fix the problem. Because if they don't, what's the point in doing them? You can be really busy if you like, but there are hundreds of things you could do to keep you busy. What you want to do is make progress. So check that the option or options fixes the problem. And then the third bit is make a decision. And I've talked before about the 1- and 2-way doors. Sometimes you really have to deliberate about a decision. Sometimes you can quickly make a decision because you can always undo it later and come back through the door that you've already gone through. Again, if you've not seen that video, go and have a look at it. I think it will really help you. And the point I've also making here is that it's got to be the right person making the decision. If you make a decision about, I don't know, to give everyone a pay rise, but you don't work in HR and you don't do pay and reward, you're not the right person. You haven't got the authority to make that decision. So you've got to get the right people with the right authority to make that decision. And sometimes it's an individual and sometimes that's a collective decision. But again, I think the thing I would say is, remember, it's not a democracy either. We've all got roles, we've all got responsibilities and accountabilities. Make sure the right people with the right accountabilities are the ones making decisions. It's a bit like when, I don't know, somebody goes to buy a car, or somebody is a salesperson is talking to a company. What they want to do is talk to somebody that has the authority to make a purchase. Otherwise, they're just wasting their time. So that's step number 2, make an informed decision. Step number 3, and this is an important thing to do, that is bank the decision. So once you've made a decision, that's great, you've banked it. So really what you need to do there is make sure you capture the decision that was made. You've made the decision in the previous step, you just make sure everyone's clear, right, we've made a decision and this is what it is. I would suggest as well that you write that down somewhere, and not only write it down but also socialise it. So make sure that relevant people, relevant stakeholders know that that decision has been made. And again, if you refer back to the previous video about stakeholder mapping, that will help you work out who it is that you need to tell and who it is you need to inform, etc., etc. So socialise it. And the important thing about this is everyone then knows that that thing has been decided and you're moving on. And that leads me nicely then to the fourth step, which is exactly that, moving forward. And again, the trick here is to try not to revisit things that you've already decided. And the reason I've said to try not to is because occasionally, new information may come up, or there's a change of policy, or, I don't know, where you could previously spend on something, you're not allowed to do that anymore, either because you haven't got any money as a company, or the policies have changed and your company doesn't want you spending money on those sorts of items anymore. So occasionally you might need to go and revisit, but in the vast majority of cases you should just bank it. And if people raise it, you can confidently say, well, look, we've already talked about that, we've socialized it, we've made sure people are aware, the right people are in the room, unless something significant's changed, that's banked. And you can confidently say it's banked and we're going to move on. And then that is the last step, basically. Move on to the next thing. Keep looking forwards, don't keep looking backwards. That thing has been dealt with, that thing has been solved. So build on it rather than keep going back. And the reason that you want to do that is you want to have some solid foundations. You don't want to keep revisiting things and undermining your direction of travel. So those are the 4 steps. I'm just going to put them back up here again. And the whole point of this is to keep you and your team and your company or organisation moving forwards. So the 4 steps again are: discuss, making sure you have the right people in the room, decide, again making sure you have people with the right authority to make decisions. Once you've made a decision, bank that decision and socialise it, and then move on. And if you do that, as I said before, what that's going to do is it's going to move you forward, but not just for the sake of it. It's going to improve your productivity, your effectiveness, your motivation, people's development, the morale, retention, attraction, and a whole host of other things, including improving your culture, which is one of the things I talked about in the previous video. So that's it for this week. That's it for this video. I will be revisiting the topic of moving forwards because there are lots of other things that we can talk about that also have those same positive impacts. So there'll be some other videos that have a similar sort of title, but we'll be talking about a slightly different way of making sure that we can continue to move forward. As ever, the things that I talk about in these videos are tried and tested. Either they are models that lots of people use, or the things that I use in my own leadership life. So I know they work, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you about it and suggesting that you use them. So I say that's it for this video. As ever, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, let me know why. I'd be really interested to hear. And if you can, do me a favour and subscribe or comment, all of that just helps the channel, and just helps me understand what is useful to you, and what other videos you might want based on your feedback. So if you have ideas for future videos, then just give me a shout. Just let me know what you think. That's it. I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.